Before we continue to the story of today, I want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for helping me reach 60 subscribers. I know 60 might seem small to some, but to me, it means the world. Your support, comments, and encouragement are what keep me going. If you're new here or haven't subscribed yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the journey. Without wasting much of our time, let's jump into the story. It all started with a job offer that seemed too good to pass up. I had been working as a freelance investigator for years, specializing in cybercrime and digital forensics. My expertise had landed me some decent gigs in the past, but nothing quite like this. The email came through on a late Thursday evening while I was preparing to wrap up my work for the week. It was from a private firm that had a reputation for handling cases that were, let's say, a little outside the law. The subject line was simple: confidential, dark web investigation. At first, I thought it was a scam. I mean, who wouldn't be suspicious of an unsolicited email offering a six-figure payout for a sensitive investigation? But then I saw the name of the company, Next Tech Solutions. They were well known in the industry for dealing with high-risk cases, and their clients were usually very influential, some even with questionable backgrounds. I'd heard of them before, but never had the opportunity to work with them. The email was straightforward. They needed someone with experience navigating the dark web, someone who could discreetly investigate illegal activities without drawing attention. It seemed simple enough. Track down a few individuals involved in hacking, human trafficking, and illicit drug sales. But the deeper I read into the message, the more unsettling it became. The job wasn't to find these people or shut down their operations. No, the company wanted me to monitor them. They wanted me to observe the transactions and communications in the hidden corners of the web, all while remaining completely undetected. They offered a hefty sum, double my normal rate, and guaranteed full confidentiality. I was curious, too curious in fact. I couldn't help but feel the rush of excitement. This could be the opportunity of a lifetime. I'd always been fascinated by the dark web, the anonymity it provided, and the secrets it hid. For years, I had studied its depths from a distance, researching and analyzing, but I had never gone this far into its dangerous labyrinth. I took the job. It wasn't the smartest decision, looking back on it, but the money and thrill of the investigation clouded my judgment. I signed the non-disclosure agreement, completed all the necessary security checks, and logged into the encrypted server they provided. The instructions were clear: stay hidden, gather information, and report back regularly. The more I gathered, the bigger the payday would be. At first, it was just routine. I found myself trolling through forums filled with discussions about illegal arms deals, hacking services, and black market drugs. The deeper I dug, the more disturbing things I found, but nothing that directly threatened me. For weeks, I sat in my office, tapping away at my keyboard, compiling reports. The money rolled in, and I was becoming increasingly addicted to the strange, eerie world I had entered. Then, things started to change. One day, while I was browsing through a particularly sinister site, a marketplace for stolen data and human trafficking, the screen flickered. It was just a brief glitch, but it felt wrong. I brushed it off as nothing more than a technical hiccup, but then it happened again. This time I noticed something strange. A message had appeared on my screen, not one I had typed or expected to see. It read, "I know who you are. You're not supposed to be here." My heart skipped a beat. I stared at the screen, trying to process the message. I scanned my surroundings. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but a creeping sense of dread began to settle over me. I quickly logged out of the site and shut down my computer, trying to shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching me. I figured it was just a prank, maybe some hacker trying to scare me. I've dealt with plenty of threats in my line of work, and none of them had ever been serious. But this felt different. The message felt personal, almost like it was directed at me specifically. Still, I pushed it aside. I was here to investigate, and I couldn't let a little scare stop me. But as the days went on, the messages continued. At first, they were sporadic, short, cryptic messages that popped up while I was browsing different sites on the dark web. The tone of the messages grew increasingly hostile. I ignored them, thinking they were just the work of an anonymous troll, someone who had stumbled upon my online footprint. Then the messages began to include details that only someone with access to my personal information could know. They mentioned my full name, my location, my past cases, even my family. It was as if they were watching my every move. One night after a long day of monitoring, I decided to take a break and grab a drink. I walked away from my desk, leaving my computer running. When I returned to my office, I noticed something chilling. My browser was open to a page I had never visited, a page filled with images of me. They were pictures of me, taken from different angles and positions, like someone had been following me. My blood ran cold as I realized the horrifying truth. They had been watching me. My phone buzzed. I grabbed it, hoping to distract myself from the unease creeping over me. But there was no escape. A message flashed on the screen. "We see you. You're ours now." That was when I realized the nightmare I had stumbled into was much worse than I ever imagined. This wasn't just a job anymore. This was personal. And whatever I had unleashed in the darkest corners of the web was coming for me. I should have walked away. I should have deleted everything, erased every trace of my involvement in the dark web, and never looked back. But I didn't. My curiosity, that damned instinct to keep pushing deeper, was far stronger than my common sense. The next few days felt like a twisted blur. Every move I made seemed to be anticipated. I'd log into my systems only to find traces of unauthorized access, files I didn't open, pages I didn't visit, messages I didn't send. It was as if the dark web wasn't just a place I was observing, but a place that was watching me, learning my habits, anticipating my every action. The messages kept coming, more frequent, more precise. It was no longer just text on a screen. One evening, after a long, grueling day of sifting through hidden marketplaces, I sat down to eat my dinner in my apartment. My phone buzzed on the table. I looked down at the notification, my pulse quickening as I recognized the name on the message. It was from an untraceable contact on my encrypted messaging app. The message read, "I know what you're eating tonight." My stomach dropped. How? How could they know that? The paranoia was becoming unbearable. I checked my front door locks, my windows, every part of my apartment that could be vulnerable. There was nothing, no sign that anyone had been there. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being hunted, that I was the prey in some twisted game I'd been forced into. I tried to report the messages to Nextech, to alert them to what was happening, but there was no response. The silence on their end was deafening. It was as though they were actively avoiding me, distancing themselves from whatever had gone wrong with this case. That's when I realized I was on my own. The next message came 2 days later. "We've been watching you long enough to know your habits. You've made it this far. Now we're coming for you." That's when I realized how deep I had sunk. The people, or whatever they were, on the other end of the dark web weren't just threatening me. They were watching my every move. They knew me. And now, they were ready to make their move. I decided it was time to get out. I couldn't risk staying on the case any longer. I couldn't risk putting myself, or anyone else, at further risk. I began packing up my equipment, preparing to leave the apartment, to disappear. But when I tried to log out of the dark web services, my system froze. The screen went black, and for a split second I thought the worst. Had they hacked into my system? Had they locked me in? I tried restarting the computer, but nothing worked. It was as if my machine was under their control now. Then the screen flickered back on, and I saw something that made my heart stop. There on the screen was my own face, staring back at me. "You didn't think you could escape, did you?" A voice crackled through my speakers, one that was distorted but unmistakably clear. It was calm, almost too calm, as if the speaker was enjoying the game they had set up for me. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. There was no way they could be this close. I had taken every measure to protect myself. My internet was secure. My location was encrypted. But somehow they had gotten to me. They had breached every layer of security, and now they were in control. "We know your every move. You're ours now. Don't try to run." I felt the walls close in. I needed to get out, to disappear before it was too late. But there was no escaping this. No matter where I went, they were always there, watching, waiting. I grabbed my bag, stuffed my laptop and equipment into it, and bolted out of the apartment. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to move. I couldn't stay in the same place for too long. I ran through the streets, not stopping for anything, until I found myself at a safe house I had used in the past. But I wasn't safe. The moment I stepped inside, I knew I was being followed. My phone buzzed again. This time the message was different. "We're already here." I turned around, my breath quickening, but there was nothing. Nothing but the empty street. I had been in this business long enough to know when something didn't feel right, and this felt like the beginning of the end. I should have known better. The moment I stepped inside that safe house, I had sealed my fate. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, even though I was completely alone. At least, that's what I thought. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind through the broken windows seemed like a signal. They were closing in on me. The phone buzzed again. I stared at it, unable to breathe for a moment. "We've been watching you since you left your apartment." My fingers trembled as I gripped the phone, but I couldn't ignore it. I had to know what they wanted. I had to understand what I had gotten myself into. I tapped the screen. "You think you can hide from us? You can't outrun us? You can't escape?" I felt a cold sweat trickle down my back. I wasn't in control of the situation anymore. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. They had been tracking me from the very beginning. Every keystroke, every online search. It didn't matter how secure I thought my system was. They had access to everything. I dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, but it didn't stop buzzing. I stared at the wall, unable to focus. My mind was racing, but all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat. Then the lights flickered. At first I thought it was just the wiring, but when they flickered again, I knew something was wrong. The safe house wasn't safe anymore. I grabbed my bag, preparing to leave, but the door slammed shut before I could make it out. The air grew thick, suffocating. The temperature dropped rapidly, and I felt a chill seep into my bones. My breath came out in visible puffs as I looked around, realizing something terrifying. I wasn't alone. Someone or something was here with me. My phone buzzed once more. This time, it wasn't a message. It was a video. My stomach dropped as I opened it. The video started with a grainy image of me, sitting in my chair earlier, staring blankly at the screen. But then, the camera zoomed in on the darkened corner of the room behind me. There, standing motionless, was a figure. It was hard to make out its features, the image distorted and blurry. But there was no mistaking the presence of something, someone, watching me. I could see its outline, tall and thin, standing so still it was almost like it wasn't human. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I watched the figure begin to move, slowly creeping toward me. It wasn't until it got closer to the camera that I realized how horribly wrong everything had become. The thing in the corner wasn't human. I slammed the phone down on the floor, heart racing, my hands shaking. I bolted to the window, looking outside for any sign of movement. But all I saw was the same empty street. There was nothing out there, but I knew. I knew they were watching me. I had to get out. There was no other choice. I grabbed my things, shoved them into my bag, and kicked open the window. It was on the second floor, but I didn't care. I had to escape. I leaped out, landing hard on the ground below, pain shooting up my legs, but I didn't stop. I didn't care about the pain. I just had to run. I ran down the alleyways, not daring to stop, not daring to look back. My mind was reeling. What had I got myself into? Who were these people? And what did they want from me? I couldn't run forever. I knew that. But as I sprinted through the night, I could hear them. The soft hum of a car engine idling somewhere in the distance. I dared not turn around, but I could feel their presence closing in. They were always one step ahead. No matter how fast I ran, they were always right there waiting for me. The feeling of being hunted became all-consuming. Every street corner, every alley, every passing car, I was convinced they were right behind me. I ducked into a convenience store, panting, my hands slick with sweat. I tried to steady my breath, but it was hard to concentrate, harder still to think clearly. I couldn't take this anymore. I looked at the cashier behind the counter, and for a brief moment, our eyes locked. There was something off about him. He smiled, but it wasn't a normal smile. It was a thin, almost predatory grin. Then I heard it, soft at first, but unmistakable. A buzz coming from my phone. I reached into my bag and pulled it out, my eyes scanning the screen. The message was simple. "We know where you are." I froze. That's when I saw it. The reflection in the glass behind the cashier wasn't mine. I couldn't breathe. My heart pounded in my chest, a deafening thud that seemed to drown out everything else. My hand trembled as I held the phone, the screen still displaying the chilling message, "We know where you are?" But that wasn't what caught my attention. It was the reflection. Behind the cashier, in the glass that separated us, I saw the outline of someone, no, something, standing just out of view. It wasn't me. It wasn't the cashier either. There was no one standing there physically, but in the reflection, there was a figure, a tall, thin shape, distorted but clearly human-like, its face obscured by shadow. I snapped my head around, eyes darting across the store, but no one was there. I turned back to the reflection, the figure now moving closer, its long arms slowly reaching out toward the glass. I dropped the phone, the screen flashing wildly on the floor. I turned and bolted for the door, but my legs felt like they were moving in slow motion. Panic had completely overtaken me. The world around me blurred as I pushed through the door and out onto the street. I didn't stop running. I couldn't. I could feel them getting closer, their presence hanging over me like a suffocating cloud. Every step I took seemed to be dragging me deeper into their trap. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to keep moving. I couldn't let them catch me. My thoughts raced. How did they know where I was? How could they track me so precisely? And more importantly, who were they? I was still in a daze as I ran, weaving through streets, taking random turns in the hopes that I could shake them off. But the buzzing in my pocket, a steady, unrelenting hum, never stopped. My phone. I pulled it out, fingers trembling as I read the new message. "You're running out of time. They're coming for you." I stopped dead in my tracks. They weren't talking about the people hunting me. They were talking about something else, something more dangerous. I wasn't the only target anymore. I ran again, desperately trying to put as much distance between myself and whoever, whatever, was chasing me. I needed to hide, but there was nowhere safe. I turned down alley after alley, my breath ragged and shallow, heart pounding like a drumbeat in my chest. And then just as I rounded another corner, I heard something. Footsteps. It was like they were everywhere, closing in on me from every direction. I pressed my back against the cold brick of a building, my eyes darting around, looking for the source of the sound. And then I saw them. A figure emerged from the shadows ahead, walking slowly, deliberately. The tall, thin shape from the reflection in the store. The one I had seen but couldn't believe. It was here, and it wasn't alone. Behind it, more figures appeared, shadowy, indistinct shapes that blended into the darkness. I could feel their eyes on me, even though I couldn't see their faces. They didn't need to be visible to make me feel the weight of their gaze. I swallowed hard, my throat dry and tight, panic rising in my chest. I had to get away. I couldn't let them get closer. I turned and ran, not thinking about where I was going, only about escaping the suffocating terror that was pursuing me. My phone buzzed again. "You're not running from them. You're running from us." I ignored it. I couldn't afford to look at it now. I had to focus. I had to survive. But my legs were giving out. I was exhausted, my breath ragged, my body pleading for rest. But I couldn't stop. They were closing in. Then, as I turned another corner, I came face to face with what had been following me. It wasn't just one figure. It was a group. No, a horde, tall, distorted, and moving unnaturally fast. Their eyes glowed faintly, but there was something wrong about them. They weren't human, and yet they had the same shape, the same outline as the thing I had seen in the reflection earlier. Before I could even react, one of them lunged toward me, its long arms shooting out with a speed that defied logic. I staggered backward, nearly falling, but I didn't have time to recover. They were coming for me, all of them. and there was no escaping now. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Just as the first of them grabbed my arm, the world around me shattered. An explosion of light and noise. I was thrown backward, my head slamming into the ground. My vision blurred and everything went black. When I regained consciousness, I was no longer outside. My surroundings were unfamiliar. Cold concrete beneath me, and the dim flickering lights above gave the space an almost sterile feel. I could smell something foul, like metal and rust, thick in the air. My head throbbed with a pain that sent waves of nausea coursing through me. I struggled to sit up, my body heavy and uncooperative, but the pain in my head was like a vice. As I blinked, trying to clear the fog from my mind, I saw them. They were standing in front of me. Those figures. There were no shadows now, no distortion. They were fully visible, standing tall in dark, tattered clothing, their faces obscured by shadows that seemed to hang around them like a veil. I couldn't move. My body wouldn't respond to my frantic thoughts. I was paralyzed, staring into the void beneath their hoods. And then one of them stepped forward, its face coming into view. But it wasn't a face at all. It was a mask, an impossibly smooth, featureless surface. There were no eyes, no mouth, just an eerie blankness that made the figure look like something that didn't belong in this world. And then it spoke. "We have been watching you." The voice was deep, hollow, like the sound of gravel scraping against metal. It was neither male nor female, but something in between, a void that existed only to send a chill down your spine. "You were supposed to find out, but now we have found you." My heart lurched in my chest. I didn't understand what they meant, but I knew it couldn't be good. I had to figure out how to get out of here, how to escape this nightmare. "You shouldn't have looked," another one spoke, its voice equally chilling. "The dark web isn't meant for people like you. You opened the door. Now there's no turning back." I managed to croak out a question, my voice barely a whisper. "What do you want from me?" The figure that had spoken first took a step closer. "You were never meant to survive," as it said. "The investigation, the research, the curiosity, it all led you here. And now you will be the one hunted. You are the final piece." I felt a jolt of terror course through my body, but I couldn't move. It was like my body was bound by invisible chains. It was as though the world had stopped. Time had stopped, right in this suffocating moment. Another figure stepped forward. This one had a long, jagged scar across its face, its eyes glowing with a cold, unnatural light. "You thought you were solving a mystery? But the truth was always the same. The dark web is a trap, and you are the bait." I tried to scream, to fight, but the words and energy caught in my throat. I was completely at their mercy. The figures gathered around me, their presence pressing in like a weight on my chest. Suddenly the lights flickered, and the walls around us seemed to shift, like they weren't really walls at all, but mere projections. The truth of my situation dawned on me then. The room I was in wasn't a room at all. It was a constructed illusion, a part of the network I had unknowingly stumbled into. A prison. I was in the dark web now, but not as a visitor. No, I had become part of it. The horrors, the people, the entities I had encountered. It was all connected to me now. My investigation had gone far beyond what I could have ever imagined. The figure with the mask stepped closer. "There are others like you," it said. "Others who wandered too far, who dared to pry into the forbidden. You will join them soon. Just like the others before you." With a sudden surge of adrenaline, I managed to break free from my paralysis, just enough to turn and scramble toward the wall, clawing at the thin air. But my hand connected with something far worse, a cold, slick surface. I looked down in horror, and there it was, a screen. Another damn screen. I could see it, clearer now, an interface showing my face, my terrified expression, my body surrounded by these shadowy figures. I could see myself, trapped in this hellish place. And there, in the corner of the screen, was a notification. "Live streaming, user is the next victim." They weren't just holding me here. They were broadcasting my demise to the very same dark corners of the web that had drawn me in. I was no longer just a part of the investigation. I was the spectacle. The figures closed in, their shadowy faces unreadable, but their intent clear. The trap had been set long ago. I was the prey, and the hunt had begun. And as they circled me, I understood. There was no escape. There was only one way out, and that was to be consumed by the very darkness I had sought to understand.